Allan, or should I call him Allan? Because the way his name is spelled anyway. We know who Allan is, right? He's a studious employee, he likes cheese, he's red. He also might have a slightly more deranged doppelganger that occasionally takes his place. Now, we don't know for certain when the shift might be taking place. It could be between the first and second seasons, as the artwork and personality of Allan is slightly shifted between the two. It could be something that happens randomly, perhaps a DID situation where he has two personalities that can exist in the same body, one of them a normal sounding office worker and one a more nasally evil twin. Could be neither. Perhaps he realized that OMG random RXD. There are hints, suspicions, but the character we've grown to love watching over the 3 seasons isn't really the same guy throughout. There are some more jokey explanations for this. For example, the people who did the captions and descriptions for season 1 didn't realize how Allan's name was spelled in the script and used a incorrect spelling. This on its own would be enough for me to write off the theory as like a silly joke, but no. There actually is a very interesting development of Allan as a character between the seasons, and I think this theory actually does have some legitimate merit to it. So, as a Smiling Friends fan and a certified Allan lover, I thought it might be interesting if we went through every single appearance of Allan in Smiling Friends to see if we can actually legitimately prove there is, in some way or form, 2 different Allans in the show. The first time we are introduced to Allan is in season 1, episode 1. He's in the midst of laying a mousetrap with a piece of broccoli on it because a piece of cheese has gone missing. He asks if it's possibly one of his coworkers, but they deny this. He also notices a singular paperclip is missing and asks Lip if he took it. There was 74 last time, but now there's only 73. Lip gets annoyed and blows Allan off. He clarifies that he's not accusing, he's just asking. A loud snap gets his attention, and he realizes the mousetrap has worked. Seeing that the injured mouse has gone away through a hole in the fridge, he declares that he won't let his cheese thief get away, and goes into the wall to pursue it. There's a random man living in the weirdly spacious walls that Allan encounters, but instead of alarm or surprise, he just politely asks if the man saw the mouse run by. The man denies this, telling Allan to try looking elsewhere. He also reminds Allan, telling him that he should knock or make himself known before entering another space. Allan responds in a slightly more normal speaking pattern, telling him that he doesn't think he's supposed to be in there. The old man retorts that it's none of his business. Allan responds, "If you're in my office, it kind of is my business." The old man dismisses him again, and Allan disengages from the awkward situation, telling the man he's not doing this right now, bye. The old man angrily asserts his own bye. Allan looks back at him, upset, but ultimately says whatever, and moves on. Allan, resuming his formerly nasally voice, flashes his torch on the dark hallway, taunting the mouse to come out. A little purple critter runs from the corner, its hand severed from the mousetrap. It cowers as it holds a stolen piece of cheese. Allan is surprised this isn't a mouse at all. Seeing the little critter cry, he soothes it, telling it that everything's gonna be alright. He politely asks if he has his piece of cheese back. Please. The creature stabs him with a paperclip, so that's where that went, and Allan reacts calmly, simply saying ow as he removes the foreign object. The critter runs off with their stolen prize, and Allan tells them to come back as he chases after them. The creature runs into what looks like... I don't really want to say what it looks like. He pounds on it, asking, again very calmly politely, if he could have his cheese back. The sack explodes, and Allan is carried off in a tidal wave of little critters. They crucify Allan, and I do mean that in the most literal sense of the word. He cries out in pain that he just wanted his cheese. The critters are called bubbles, by the way, it doesn't really matter, but yeah. One of the Smiling Friends clients shoots the one that stole the cheese, and they're able to free him. That's all good in the end. Allan ends up in the office of Charlie, and happy they got his cheese back, eats it right then and there. Allan, you know where that cheese has been. Charlie holds Allan's hand and calls him a crazy character. Allan playfully gives Charlie's nose just a little nom, and they laugh together while Pim kinda does that. The alien bursts to the TV, thinking the viewers were watching. Allan and Charlie stand up in shock, and Charlie asks Allan what the thing is. Allan doesn't know. Charlie yells at Allan to grab it, while Allan tells Charlie to grab it instead. The pilot actually features Allan pretty heavily compared to most of season 1, which is actually awesome because we do need to establish a baseline for who Allan is as a character. Allan, as far as we can tell from this pilot, is a meticulous person who likes to keep track of all of his and his work assets. He doesn't necessarily have a great sense of what is worth cataloging and what isn't, nor does he seem to have a great sense of what is or isn't worth putting effort into going after, or alternatively, he just has a very strong sense of justice. Does it make sense to ask your coworkers if they ate a small piece of your cheese or if they misplaced a paperclip? No, of course not. It's pedantic and unnecessary. Does it make sense to crawl into the wall to retrieve a small piece of cheese that someone has stolen from you? Again, no, you should just take the L. It's way too much effort. So does Allan just misplace too much importance on seemingly random objects, or is it more the principle of you shouldn't take other people's stuff? He also seems to have an issue with tone, as his inflection is normally very flat, leading others to sometimes interpret him as being more passive-aggressive than it seems he needs to be. He does seem to have a somewhat inconsistent accent, which is interesting. Sometimes he sounds out and pronounces his words and sentences a bit strangely. Sometimes he talks relatively normally. He also seems to be relatively unobtuse in social situations, seemingly prefer to de-escalate rather than defend himself or prove himself right. When Gleb gets annoyed, Allan clarifies that he's not accusing him. When he meets the guy in the wall, Allan does acknowledge that he shouldn't be there, but when man starts to get aggressive, Allan backs off and removes himself from the situation. He doesn't fawn or try to apologize, he just sees the conversation as going to be productive, says whatever, and moves on to something that actually is productive, recovering his precious cheese. He's also a little bit weird, but like they're all a little bit weird. So we'll keep these points in the back of our head as we move on to the rest of his actions in season 1.
Where's the remote?
In episode 2, we see Allan washing dishes in the break room while wearing what looks like a pair of noise-canceling headphones. He takes them off to ask his coworkers if they've seen Gleb, as he doesn't think he came to work that day. He replaced Mr. Frog, it's not important. He's still washing the dishes by the end of the episode, so it does seem like this is something he does for his coworkers. In episode 3, he walks into the break room wearing an apron and a trowel, stopping to ask Pim what he's eating. Pim responds that he's eating a bowl of peanuts. Allan declares, "Those aren't peanuts. That's a bowl of worms for his compost." He tells Pim to give him the bowl as he takes it, giving Pim a brief look before taking it away. I don't read him as doing this like rudely, more out of concern, like, whoa, dude, don't be eating a bowl of worms. It sounds like a bit aggressive and very surface level, but again, I don't think that's an accurate reading given the other context clues. Pim does have a dream later about his future life with a girl he meets at a coffee shop, including a scene where his coworkers attend his wedding. Allan is in attendance, and Pim imagines him looking like this. It's not relevant to anything, I just think it's very rude. In episode 4, we see him hanging up Halloween decorations in the break room. He's wearing a Joker costume, specifically from the Joaquin Phoenix film, and is noticeably dateless in contrast to Gleb and Charlie. He asks Charlie what he's supposed to be, as he's not obviously wearing a costume. Fun fact, I also do this with my coworkers that don't dress up on Halloween. No, the joke never does get old. For me. Charlie tells Allan that he doesn't want to get canceled for his costume being retroactively untasteful in the future. Allan suggests they do something simple and non-offensive, like wear some face paint, look like a zombie, but Charlie's too paranoid to have it. Pim shows off his own costume by shooting pellets all over the floor, to which Allan remarks that he needs to clean those up and not leave them all over the floor. Pim keeps playing with the gun, causing one of the pellets to ricochet and hit Allan in the eye. Allan, in pain clutching his eye, understandably asks Pim, "What the fuck?" Pim scrambles with an excuse that he didn't think it hurt him. Allan quickly calms down and forgives Pim, telling him that it's fine, but no more shooting inside, no more of the gun stuff. At the end of the episode, when the forest demon enters the office, Allan does not partake in the violence, but instead looks on in horror as the demon is torn apart. In episode 5, Allan accompanies his coworkers to China to bury the Sentry egg. He asks if it was necessary to come away to China to do so, and Charlie confirms that this is what the egg wanted. In episode 6, Allan is playing a video game in Gleb at the break room. He tells Gleb that the way he's playing isn't fair, he's just button mashing, there's no skills involved. Charlie asks if they can turn the game down, and Allan apologizes and immediately obliges. When Charlie comes back to the office after his adventure in the Chan Forest, he looks worse for the wear. Allan asks if he's okay, and Charlie says it's just allergies. Allan disagrees and pulls out his phone, saying he thinks they need to call someone. Pim, knowing that it was from a potion, has not taken the time to contact a health professional, so good thing Allan noticed, I guess. In episode 7, Allan is in the break room taking inventory of the fridge. He just, does that for a few minutes. Later, Mr. Boss is having hallucinations and crashing out over the frowning friends threatening his business. Allan walks by and sees the crash out, stopping to ask if he's alright. Mr. Boss waves him off, saying that he's fine and to go find a piece of cheese or something. Allan does not respond. He just walks off. Later, when Pim confronts the frowning friends, we see that both Allan and Gleb have turned coat and start working for them instead. When Pim is startled by this, Allan apologizes and says that they offer a better 401k. When Mr. Boss busts into the building and threatens Grim with a... He breaks down crying and pisses himself, making the mob he gathered lose faith and leave. Seeing this, Allan asks if he thinks he's supposed to keep detaining them. In episode 8, Allan's in the office baking Christmas cookies for his coworkers. Mr. Boss comes in and asks them to find a Christmas tree for the office, which Charlie finds incredibly annoying as it's Christmas Eve and he doesn't want to be at work longer than he has to. Pim tells Charlie that his negative mood affects the rest of them, to which Charlie retorts that Pim's the only one who cares. He pointedly asks Allan if he's affected, to which Allan replies that he doesn't care, he just wants to find a tree. As Pim and Charlie argue and get more loud and argue with each other, Allan cuts in their bickering and suggests a tree that might be suitable for their needs. Allan has been holding the axe until now, and he asks Pim if he wants to be the one to chop it down. Charlie interrupts them and grabs the axe out of Allan's hand. Allan doesn't say anything, but he does look uncomfortable. At Charlie's funeral, we see Allan looking forlorn and puts his hand on Gleb's head to comfort him. Now, episode 9 is really interesting because we see how the characters react when the world and problems are normal. Basically, anyone can have a strange and weird reaction in a strange and weird circumstance, so we get a really unique look here at how Allan operates when the stakes are more tame, I guess. I have a lot more to break down this one, so summary is going to be a little bit longer, please bear with me. In episode 9, we see the gang walk into the airport, excited for their vacation to Brazil. Allan suggests that they go to the giant Jesus statue first. Charlie corrects him, saying he's thinking of Christ the Redeemer. Allan says, oops, I think of it as the big Jesus. Charlie suggests that they drop off their bags, and Allan says says that's a good idea. Asking which hotel they were in, he asks Pim, to which Pim responds that he doesn't know. Charlie says it was Pim's responsibility to book the hotel, and Pim says that it was Allan's. Allan says that he sent Pim the link on Messenger. He was supposed to book the hotel. Pim again turns around to Allan, doubling down that he thought it was Allan's responsibility. Allan, looking concerned, reiterates that was not. They are congesting foot traffic, so Allan suggests that they get out of the way of the people to figure it out. Pim again says that he thought it was Allan. Allan patiently again says no. That was on you. Him and Charlie get into a heated argument, and Allan tries to defuse the public outburst, suggesting that they go sit over a bar and figure it out. Pim again says he doesn't remember being responsible, and Allan continues to defuse the situation by saying they should try to stay cool. Allan tries to speak up, but Pim interrupts him. Pim stirs and says that Allan can go ahead, but Allan allows him to go first regardless. Charlie comments on how packed the airport is, and Allan agrees. Pim says that they're going to have trouble booking hotels since it's Mardi Gras, and Allan says that that makes sense. The man comes up and harasses them for money. Charlie says he thought the man was going to hit him, and Allan agrees and laughs, saying he saw Charlie flinch. They're sat at the bar, and Allan orders water for the table. Charlie orders fries to the table, and Allan takes the initiative to thank the waitress. Pim suggests they get a more expensive hotel, and Charlie shoots it down, with Allan gently adding in that he only brought enough to cover his portion of a cheaper hotel. Charlie and Pim start bickering loudly again, and Allan picks up a menu to occupy himself, clearly uncomfortable with the scene that's being caused. Pim mentions again that he doesn't remember that he needs to book a hotel, that he feels that others are ganging up on him. Allan then cuts in to tell Pim, no, we're not ganging up on you, dude. We're just trying to figure out a solution. Charlie then says maybe they should call the boss to see if he'd have any options or advice for them, and Allan agrees. Allan volunteers to be the one to call the boss. He calls him and puts him on speaker, telling him that he's with the others. They explain the situation, and the boss tells them they kind of chose the worst time to go, which Allan agrees with. The boss doesn't really have a way to help them, so Allan and the rest thank him and hang up. Pim actually takes a beat to genuinely apologize, and Allan reassures him, saying that they're not mad at him, they're just in a bad situation. Charlie suggests that they fly back as to not burn the money on an expensive hotel, and just replan the trip in a shared Google Doc to make sure everything is locked in. Allan agrees with this. He looks at his phone and informs them that the next flight time is in 45 minutes. Allan tells him that it's alright. Let's just go home. Okay, that was season 1. Let's ask ourselves 2 questions. 1, was Allan's personality in season 1 in line with his personality in the pilot? And 2, did we learn anything extra about Allan's personality from season 1? Well, let's look back on what we established during the pilot. He's 1, meticulous, maybe even to the point of excess. 2, has an inconsistent tone that can be interpreted as passive-aggressive even if he isn't being so. He seems to slip between a relatively normal voice and one with more vocal stems. 3, he's socially competent enough and prefers to de-escalate situations without fawning. He doesn't put on an active bravado to seem better, he doesn't accept blame for things that aren't his fault, he doesn't really seek out external validation at all really. He's emotionally secure in himself and prefers to keep the peace. So is season 1 in line with this? Yes, actually. He is a secondary character, so it's not like he has a ton of screen time compared to the others. But here are some characteristics I picked up on during season 1. In episode 2, he's washing dishes for his coworkers. Episode 3, he has some kind of gardening project he's working on for the office, maybe it's the boss's tulips for season 2. Episode 4, he's decorated the break room for them and actively encourages Charlie to take place in festivities. He also tries to keep the office from becoming a mess from Pim's pellets, and is relatively quick to cool off and forgive Pim when he gets shot in the eye. Episode 5, Allan goes to China and helps coworkers bury an egg. Episode 6, Allan takes Charlie's health seriously, taking the initiative to both turn on the TV and call a doctor on his behalf. Episode 7, Allan takes the inventory of the fridge and goes with Gleb to work with the founding friends after the boss blows him off. In episode 8, Allan makes cookies for his coworkers. He also tries to defuse an argument between them that doesn't end well for Charlie. He ends up attending his friend's funeral and comforting Gleb. In episode 9, Allan's remarkably patient with Pim despite his multiple deflections, including trying to shift the blame to Allan for something that wasn't his fault. He also takes initiative for the group multiple times. Let's move out of the way, let's get a booth, I'll order water for the table, I'll thank the waitress, I'll call the boss on my phone, I'll figure out when the plane leaves, etc, etc. He's really calm and level-headed despite the situation they're in. He doesn't take out any of his anger on Pim or cause a scene, and he does his best to keep the group move towards a solution without taking blame for a situation he didn't create. He's not fawning, he's not overbearing, he's just helping things get to where they need to go. I think we see a couple of things here that we can add on to Allan's characterization. He's pretty helpful, so we see him multiple times go his way to make their lives easier, like washing their dishes, taking in the office. He generally cares about his coworkers, helping Charlie when he was sick, checking up on the boss when he was crashing out. He also seems to be a pretty studious worker as compared to the other members of Smiley Friends. He's basically always doing something to help around the office. The fact that most of the times we see him in the break room, he's not taking a break, I think says something about his character. Him and Charlie usually sit around waiting for a call. Gleb is, well, Gleb. But Allan basically always finds something to do to stay productive. So I think it's safe to say that he takes his job, whatever it might be, very seriously. He also seems to have, I don't want to say hierarchy, but he does seem to have different levels of closeness between his coworkers. He seems to be the closest to Gleb, followed by Charlie, Pim, and the boss. He doesn't seem to be much of a ladies' man, as we never see him with any partners or romantic interests. Charlie and Gleb both have girlfriends, and Pim does imagine a potential partner at least twice, but both Allan and the boss are noticeably bitchless. Obviously this changes in season 2, I'm just establishing the season 1 baseline. I think establishing a season 1 baseline is especially important because there is like an actual physical change in how Allan is drawn between season 1 and season 2. In season 1, his tie is straight, and season 2, it's wrinkly. Could totally be a simple aesthetic change, but if it also correlates alongside personality change in season 2, I think that's something worth looking at. With that all in mind, let's check out Allan season 2 and see if he remains in the season 1 characterization or if we notice any significant deviations. Ad break. This video is sponsored by my Ko-Fi. Specifically, the fundraiser that's currently on my Ko-Fi. You see, I just participated in the DashCon 2 ticket trials. Yes, it was bloody, and no, there were not many survivors, but I did manage to get a ticket. And because this con is so small and tickets are so hard to come by, I don't know if I'm ever going to get a chance to go again. If you don't know what DashCon is, I'll throw a couple videos up here that you can go check out if you'd like, that go more into the first DashCon, which, you know, notoriously not the best, but the rebranded one, the new one they're doing now, seems to be really cool. I've heard really positive things about it, and as someone who's like a member of the YouTube community and the Tumblr community and the AO3 community and just like in this like fandom theorizing space, like I would just absolutely love the chance to like meet some of the people who do what I do and to make some new friends like in real life and make these connections. And I just think it'd be a really cool opportunity because I've always wanted to go to Toronto. It seems like an awesome city. So I'm just doing a little fundraiser to try to raise a ticket so I can go. And I'm doing the fundraiser through Ko-Fi specifically because this way you don't have to have a monthly recurring thing like Patreon. Like if you want to just give a one-off donation to just help out a little bit, you totally can. Or if you want to do a monthly donation, you can do that as well. It's pretty flexible. And because I don't want to ask for something for nothing, if you do donate to the Ko-Fi, you do get access to my backlog catalog of companion videos. You get your name that ends the credit if you are a monthly member. But any money you give during this time frame will go towards me being able to go and pursue this opportunity. So if you like my content and you want to see more, or you just have a couple dollars and want to help out, be really cool. I'd appreciate it. If not, you don't want to, no worries at all, completely optional, but I just figured to throw it out there. And yeah, so link is in the description and the QR code on screen if you feel like doing so. Again, no pressure, just thought I'd throw it out there. I would really love to go. Anyway, love you guys. Back to the video.
I don't know what that is.
I was thinking about like wrinkling my tie for like the transition between season 1 and 2, but like I don't want to fuck up my microphone, so you're gonna have to use your imagination for that one. This first episode has more Allan screen time than normal, so it'll be a little bit longer recap, but it does show what I believe to be an interesting shift. Episode 1, we see that Allan is spraying a homeless man lowering by his work with dirty brown hose water to encourage him to leave. Pim tells him to stop, saying that the man he's spraying is Grimbly, and that he's been playing his game since he was a tadpole. Grimbly says that he appreciates Pim for liking his work, unlike that red thing. He says he hates that red thing and he spits on him. Allan responds by spraying him with the hose again. Pim expresses a desire to help Grimbly, but Charlie cautions against it, saying that he himself must make the request for it to be valid. Allan rejects, saying that he will assist Pim on the job, not to see him smile, of course, because he wants him off the property, and because his arm is tired from all the spraying. Pim and Allan go into the building of Grimbly's old publisher, and Allan tells him he can sleep there. Pim explains that they actually do need to help him, to which Allan responds, ugh. A little critter scurries out to let them know the CEO will see them now, and Allan curb stomps her without hesitation. When Pim looks on in shock, he responds, what? She startled me. When they do meet the CEO, he offers them a chicken nugget, to which Allan finds disgusting. He also doesn't seem interested in taking Grimbly onto the staff again, to which Allan asks, like, so what, you can't take him off our hands? The CEO offers to let Grimbly be as skinny to kiss his nugget, and Allan responds that he hates him. Pim decides to try the crowd from Grimbly's game and asks his former nemesis if he'd be interested. He's not, so Allan is being crashed on his couch instead, but it's no dice. He asks if there are any other characters from his stupid game. He says there is, Mr. Millipede. We smash cut to Mr. Millipede's grave. Grimbly is obviously distressed at this. Allan is speaking just sleep there, you know, like on the grave of his friend. Grimbly is eventually able to get his own game, and Allan expresses pleasure that he has a home now and he doesn't have to spray him with the hose water no more. Now, this is the first time we've seen Allan going on a mission. He spends a vast majority of his time in the office, and the few times we've seen him outside the office, he's kind of been off the clock, so to speak, sort of. I personally noticed a few quirks here. One, he keeps his nasally voice throughout the entire episode, never switching between a more normal voice like he usually does when he has more screen time. 2, he's a little more cold and aggressive than you would expect him to be. The last time he encountered a trespasser was in the pilot, with a guy living in the office walls. While Allan did say that he shouldn't be there, he didn't actually take any action to remove him. Contrast that with Grimbly, where he's literally hosing him with dirty brown hose water. Granted, Allan was on the hunt for his cheese in pilot, so it's possible he would have dealt with the wallman if he was like already busy. Not only was he pretty callous towards Grimbly's situation, he also kicked that secretary, which is odd, because he's never come across as violent before now. But again, he did say it was a reflex, so it could still be waved off. Overall, we do seem to be seeing a few quirks that don't particularly line with the season 1 character style, but if this is the only episode that demonstrates this, I think it could be handwaved fairly easily, so let's continue on season 2 to see if there's anything else strange that stands out. In episode 2, a presidential election is taking place. While playing chess with Gleb, Allan states that Squiggly Miggly will definitely win the election, and that President Jimble doesn't stand a chance. Pim states that that's not possible, and describes a time where a president did make a narrow victory despite being unpopular in the past. Allan bobbed his head towards Pim, saying that he's so right, he forgot about that factoid. The body language and tone does come across as very sarcastic, but again, we know he has a bit of tone issues, so we can't say for sure. Allan asks when the results for the election are going to come in, and the boss gives a bit of a disturbing answer. Charlie and Pim get a little excited, and Allan tells them to shut up. The results are coming in. They find out that Gleb is the tie-breaking vote and let Mr. Frog win, and Allan asks him, what the fuck? Gleb says, something, and that's enough to change his mind. Now, episode 3 is our first and to date only Allan-centered episode. Because he's a background character, I can usually recap his segments pretty quickly, but that's obviously not going to be the case for this episode. Because of that, I'm going to skip over a lot of the finer details and mostly just focus on Allan himself, specifically on anything interesting about his personality and decision-making skills throughout the episode, just so this part doesn't feel like too bloated with recapping and actually feels like a little more focused. A couple things from his morning sequence. He is hygienic, has bad eyesight, and has a killer smile. Then we get a scene that's often brought up when discussing the two Allans theory. A curvy blue woman is in Allan's bed and tells him that last night was amazing. He says, okay, and goes about with his day. I have seen a surprising amount of speculation on what's happening here. Relating specifically to the two Allan theory, the theory here is that one Allan picked up this chick, had a good time with her, and the next morning the other Allan woke up and didn't remember sleeping with her, which prompts him to say, okay, as he's confused on what she's referring to. This is one reading of this moment. I've heard an interpretation that this was something that was staged by the landlord, so Allan was confused. I've heard that he's gay, so he understood a woman, which he literally slept with one, but whatever. I've heard that he's a service top, so the kid was more like yep, that's just what I do. He could also just be awkward. It does stand out as being strange, especially for season 1 Allan, but season 2 Allan is kind of stranger than he's seen in the first season so far, so I'm gonna say it's not like out of character, but it's definitely odd. My instinct is just go with the most realistic option, which would be it was a one-night stand or friends with benefit situation. Allan's just awkward and wasn't sure how to respond. We don't see him with a long-term partner ever, so he might just be an unromantic guy. But it could still be used as evidence for this case, so we'll stick it in the back of our minds. Anyway, the landlord was just wondering if he wanted to hang out with him and smoke weed and fill their bellies with diet soda while they played Burnout Revenge for the PS2. Allan declines this offer as he has to get to work. Once he gets there, he's sent out to fetch some paper clips. This is important, but he does use a scooter to get around, which, yes, we love a low-carbon impact king. He tries what I think is like the end user's equivalent of like a Staples. He has an altercation with one of the retail workers there, and I'll be honest, it does feel out of character. Allan doesn't really escalate situations, generally speaking. He isn't really defensive or rude. He certainly doesn't seem like the type to bug and interrupt a retail worker, so that fact that he gets so heated, escalates the situation so quickly, and antagonizes an employee like that, I don't know, it seems like weirdly unlike him. I know some people feel entitled to humanize retail workers, fucking trust me. So it's not like the idea that someone would interrupt someone who's clearly busy and then get into altercation with them that I find strange. It's the fact that it's Allan doing it that I find strange. Anyway, they're sold out paper clips, so he has to try a computer repair shop in Crinesville. The owner can't sell them to him as he needs a unique shape to make his repairs. Allan apologizes if his suggestion sounds rude, but why not use his long nose? This works, and the man gives him the paper clips. This feels more in character to me. Allan is smart, and he's aware that he can come across in an unintentionally rude way socially, so this interaction makes more sense to me. But he also nears his eyes and said that was annoying after he leaves. If he's talking about the house with paper clips, that makes sense. If he's just talking about like the guy not realizing his nose work instead, I do find that odd. This part's me a little more rapid fire. Basically, a guy steals paper clips and goes into a helicopter to escape. Allan grabs on for the ride. The US Air Force shoots them down. A Sasquatch steals paper clips. A skeleton comes to life, beheads Sasquatch and steals paper clips. Allan chases after them on the ghost ship, says ghost ship and Allan get eaten by a sea monster, and then Allan angrily stabs the inside of the stomach, crying out that he's just trying to do his job, which causes him and paper clips to be expunged. The box does not have the clips, however, instead containing a ransom note telling him to meet back at his apartment. Turns out, it was the landlord the whole time. He orchestrated the entire thing. Why? Well, he was just wondering if he wanted to hang out and smoke some weed while they filled their bellies with diet soda and play Burnout Revenge for PS2. Allan, understandably, offers to knock his block off and take the paper clips instead. The landlord is bringing explosive guests, though, so Allan ends up conceding. The old man from the repair shop briefly comes back from hell to remind Allan that paper clips can be used to tinker electronics, so Allan is able to do so to disarm the bomb. The landlord is ashamed of his failure and commits seppuku in front of him. Allan does not care and steps over him with the now secure paper clips. This feels like it could be in character. The landlord was generally psycho and was going to, or possibly did, kill a lot of people. But he was also pretty horrified when he saw the forest demon get apart Eden, so I could see an argument either way. Allan gives paper clips to Mr. Boss, and he rewards him with a little hymn. Allan doesn't want it and gives it to Charlie instead. The Boss and Allan's relationship does seem to not be great compared to the others, and I think this is another example of this sort of mismatch in personalities and communication styles. Anyway, big overarching thing to take away from this episode, Allan still will go through extreme measures to recover pedantic things, like with the cheese in that pilot, and he still takes his job incredibly seriously. He's mostly in character for this episode, but there are definitely like a few weird points that stick out to me as him being more mean and aggressive in this season 1 baseline, as well as his usual interactions with his lady friend in the apartment. Episode 4, Allan screams when he sees that there's a giant hole in the roof, as his spouse's new wife Brittany had just flown through it. He says he's sick of running errands for the happily married couple, and that he waited 2 hours in line for what admittedly do look like pretty yummy coffees. Him and Charlie ask if they can have them, and Allan agrees, so it's possible that he doesn't like coffees, or at least not the kind that tastes like a dessert. Charlie expresses suspicion about the boss's new wife, and Allan agrees. He says they should talk about it somewhere else because it's not safe to do so in the office. You know, because of the eyeball, the one that's been there the whole time. They meet up at Charlie's place, and Allan says pinup poster, unimpressed. He then notices a weird mannequin in the corner. He asks Charlie what the thing is, and he tells him to throw it away. He pokes at it and it sings a little tune. Ew. Figure out that Brady's going to kill the boss and transfer over his assets to her father, Satan. Allan gasps, but saying gasp. This means the smiling friends will be owned by Satan. Charlie says that they should kill the boss's wife, and Allan says, great and all, but how? A quick YouTube search tells them that they need to drain her blood on a full moon. Allan points out that tonight is a full moon. The mannequin jump scares them, and Allan gets freaked out, saying he knew it was going to do that. He drops him off at the boss's house, but says he can't come along, as he has a Dr. Monster appointment with Dr. Monster. The other two ask him to expand on that, but he says he has to go. He comes back at the end of the adventure, but after he hears the boss's attempt at singing, says he'd rather be back with Dr. Monster. Charlie still doesn't know what that means, and Allan says he's never telling him. I don't know if it's just like because it's a Halloween episode, but it did remind me a little bit of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I don't think this was a reference to the dual personalities thing, but I did find Allan's caginess around the subject to be a bit strange, but it could also just be like purely for the goofs. In episode 5, the smiling friends are watching something, and Allan says that he wants to watch something else. He asks where the remote is, as he wants to watch the updates on the war instead. Given his previous interest in politics, I think we can pin Allan as being someone who is aware of and follows current events. Charlie says that the remote is broken, so Allan asks if they can at least turn it down. Charlie says the TV is broken too. Allan asks if that means they just have to watch this, but they don't, because the crazy alarm from season 1 makes it come back. He comes around to it later, saying that changed his life. In episode 6, he doesn't show up. We actually just skipped that one. In episode 7, the boss explains that he's going to buy a jewel off someone who speaks Spanish. Allan asks if he means Spanish. He doesn't. He puts Charlie, Glep, and Allan in charge of his 18-year-old son, Jason. Jason lays on the desk, weeping. Allan asks if it's supposed to be doing that, and Charlie confirms that it's normal. And Allan says, all right. After a beat, Allan says the situation is a bit weird, as they don't really hang one-on-one very much. This leads to a very interesting exchange. Charlie basically says, yeah, it's been a while, but I don't know if you remember, the last time we hung out one night, one-on-one, you sucked on my nose. Now, I'm going to be referencing back to the pilot episode, and if he is, I find him bringing this up in this way to be a bit strange. For one, Charlie initiated the physical affection by holding his hand, so it wasn't like out of nowhere. And Allan didn't suck on Charlie's nose. He just gave a little playful nom. Charlie did not react like he found it weird or uncomfortable at all, so it seemed like that was a normal boundary in their friendship. I do find it strange that Charlie wouldn't bring it up way earlier if he's uncomfortable, and I don't know why he would exaggerate the extent of what Allan did. As someone who's neurodivergent and has had neurotypical friends in the past, this could fall in line with that. I think Allan could certainly be coded as neurodivergent. I'd say there's less of a case for that for Charlie. In my own personal experience, and the other neurodivergent people's anecdotal experience, neurotypical people are kind of infamous for being kind of shitty communicators and a bit more likely to create drama. So that could be what we're seeing here. Allan is shocked hearing this and says, what? Suck on your nose? I remember doing that. Charlie confirms that it was the day with all the Desmond stuff and the Bibley stuff, which does confirm he is specifically talking about the pilot. He says it wasn't that long ago, but since 2 Halloweens have passed since then, we know this was over a year ago. He says that Allan went for the nose, got excited, and sucked on it. He gave a little nom, a nom that looked very consensual to me. He then goes on to say that he wasn't cool with that at all. Okay. So Charlie has a friend. A friend that seems to obviously struggle with certain social cues, but is otherwise a pretty competent, nice person, specifically in season 1. And instead of bringing up that friend that he did something to make him uncomfortable, which given that he knows Allan, I'm pretty sure he would know that that was not his intention, he says nothing and avoids hanging out with him one-on-one for like over a year, and only then, after the time has passed, Allan having no idea why Charlie drifted away from him, does he tell Allan that he wasn't cool with it, and not only that, paints the incident in the worst light possible to make Allan sound like he's a freak. I mean, he is a freak, but you know what I mean. It's possible that Allan did do something after that, like after the credits, but I doubt that's what's being referred to here. I think he's talking about this incident. Allan says he honestly does not remember doing that, and Charlie says it was recent, which again, no it wasn't, it was over a year ago. Allan says if he did do that, he's sorry, but he doesn't remember doing that. But it sounds like it really bothered Charlie. Charlie says it did bother him. That's why he's bringing it up now, so they can hash it out. Which, if that was your intention, why did you wait over a year? Allan says sure, but he still doesn't remember. Charlie says yeah, well, it happened. No, it fucking didn't. If you're wondering why I'm so focused on the specific exchange, it's because it's brought up a lot when talking about the two Allans theory. Allan's change of behaviors in season 2, his wrinkly tie, his not remembering what Charlie brings up, it does kind of paint a picture we all put together. And I'm not saying Allan did, like, for sure stuck on Charlie's nose and that they can't be used to bring evidence, but I do want to offer an alternative take here. Again, this is my own personal experience and experience of others like me that's called this analysis, but it does sound a lot like a neurodivergent person accidentally made a social faux pas, which like might not have even been a social faux pas at the time. The person could have just randomly decided later there was one. Instead of just like communicating that, the other person emotionally separated themselves from the well-intentioned person who simply made a mistake, if it even really was a mistake in the first place. And only after have they separated themselves with no explanation, leaving the other person confused, did they come forward with their problem and paint the neurodivergent person in the worst light possible. I am not saying that all neurotypical people do that. I am just saying it fucking happens a lot, enough to basically be a stereotype. And I hope this isn't offensive, but if you do watch my videos, I'm going to say there is at least a slight chance that you yourself might be somewhat neurodivergent. And if you are, then you 100% know what I'm talking about. If you aren't, take this as a fair reminder to always communicate directly and kindly with your friends, especially the neurospicy ones. I'm not saying like, oh, 100% that is for sure what's happening here. I'm just saying that I got a very strong vibe from it, and I do think this is a valid interpretation of what's happening. I'm not going to say it's a point for or against the two Allan theory. I think we need more evidence for that, but I'm going to put in the camp of it could either support two Allans or Allan being neurodivergent, depending on how you want to interpret that scene. Anyway, Jason fucking died. Charlie tries to give the little guy CPR, but Allan says there's no point. The CPR does not work, and Charlie says that Jason is dead. Allan's like, yeah, I already told you that. Charlie tries to put gloves and face paint to impersonate Jason, but Allan points out that they'll never work, they look nothing alike, and the boss will never believe it. Gleb agrees and rips off his suit, and Allan sarcastically says, great idea. Charlie defends himself, saying at least he's coming up with ideas, even though they kind of suck. And Allan bites back, saying that if he wasn't yapping his damn ear off, maybe he would have noticed something was wrong with Jason. Charlie turns it back around on Allan and tells him that he was on his phone the whole time, which, not true. Allan, with some out-of-character anger, says, fuck you, I was checking work emails, you yellow son of a bitch. Charlie doesn't have a good comeback for this and yells, you killed a baby, Allan. Allan correctly points out that he's not a baby, he's 18. Also, you killed him. They go back and forth, starting physical altercation, ends with Charlie choking Allan. And it's hard to say who started exactly, as Charlie did give Allan space threateningly, but Allan was the first one to slap his hand away or otherwise push him away. So depending on how you classify starting it, it could actually go either way. When the boss gets back, Charlie can't break the news, and Allan has to go and tell Mr. Boss that Jason died. The boss is able to revive him, and Allan and Charlie are relieved to know they did not kill the baby. Jason turns into a butterfly, and Allan's like, it's beautiful, wow. Jason makes a lot of dust, and Allan is the last one who seems to be affected by it. Maybe because he's the tallest? I'm not sure. I just thought it was an interesting detail. In episode 8, Allan's taking out the trash behind the building. He notices Gleb and Charlie have made a admittedly disgusting looking snowman and says, ew, that looks rotten. Charlie thinks that's a good name for their little creation. Allan says that he didn't even try. He's ugly. Charlie says that's a joke. Allan says it's stupid idiot humor. Charlie says Gleb laughs, so they must be stupid idiots. Allan responds, yeah. The boss launches off in his rocket boots, and Charlie says the boss is the funniest guy he knows. Allan agrees that he's funny. Charlie thinks the boss could do stand-up, but Allan disagrees. It's harder, you know? It's a different type of thing. The now-living snowman wants to do stuff and experience life, but Allan bows out of the situation, saying that he and Gleb are planning on doing karaoke. Gleb hesitates, and then's like, yeah, which could be interpreted as Allan made this up and Gleb is going along with it, but the line does seem to be out of character for Allan. I don't think as rude as he was with Charlie earlier, I think could also be seen as out of character, so either is possible. I personally think he was telling the truth. He does seem to still have like a strong friendship with Gleb throughout season 2. Because the break room where Allan is writing the Christmas cards for the office. After Bill Nye dies in a hot air balloon, we cut back again to the break room to Allan washing the dishes. This time wearing earmuffs instead of headphones. I didn't take the time to break this down frame by frame and analyze it, but this actually might be a reused animation from season 1 that they just drew earmuffs over. The boss comes in and threatens to kill Rotten as the screening is scaring the clients. Allan suggests they take Rotten somewhere where it's cold all the time if he's scared of melting. Charlie tells Allan that he's not just a pretty face, he's also got some brains up there. I can tell this is just like a guy talk, or if Allan is like canonically attracted for a critter. Considering we see him get some at least once with the scurvy lady makes me lean more towards yes. Allan also drops that he's built the boss's rocket boots. This also gets brought up as a potential point towards the 2 Allan theory, like maybe one alter is a rocket scientist. I don't know if I would say that's where my mind goes immediately. I don't think we know enough about Allan outside of work to draw any conclusions on that one, but it is a bit strange and stands out. So that's one thing the time pointed out. We see Allan hanging at the beach with his friends later wearing this. Anyway, he still doesn't have a partner with him as function, so that does confirm, to me at least, the curvy blue girl was either a one-night stand or just a casual friends with Benny's type of situation. Okay, that's season 2. That was a lot to go through, so good job sticking with me so far. Thank you. So, was there a noticeable and distinguishable shift in Allan's personality between season 1 and 2? I would argue yes. He seems a bit more abrasive overall, a bit more confrontational, a bit meaner, a bit ruder, etc., etc. He also seems to have his nasally affect in most of season 2, whereas with season 1 it was more of a balance. He also has a few moments that could be read as memory gaps. There's enough in those scenes that I can say for sure that's what's happening, I'll be honest. They do make sense within the context of this theory, but I also think those moments could be read in different ways depending on how you're approaching it. This change, the way he seems to be in character sometimes out of character, the timing wrinkly, the names being spelled different between seasons, the possible memory gaps, some of it can certainly be explained away when taken individually. The aspects when taken together are a little hard to discredit. Taken as a whole, it certainly does paint an interesting theory, but I still think there's another interpretation for what we've been witnessing. I won't go too in depth on that right now, as we still have one more season that we need to analyze and break down. Season 3 is a little lighter on Allan content, and it's a little more consistent than the shift between season 1 and 2, so it shouldn't take quite as long to get through season 3. In episode 1, we see Allan dusting off some picture frames of... I have no idea who those people are. The boss asks Allan if he wants to play hooky, but he declines. An knock on the door alerts him to the presence of the sitting inspector. The boss excuses himself and Allan, where he drops this classic line.
Cool. Can you give me a sec?
Allan, we are so...
Turns out the building is very much not up to code, and Allan was not aware of this. To his credit, the founding friends did seem to open up a basically identical building across from them without issues, so I understand why he didn't realize his office was such a mess. The inspector checks the walls to reveal that the guy who was living in the walls in the pilot has died. Allan seems shocked by this, so I guess he assumed the guy moved out, or maybe he never actually mentioned it to anyone. A suspiciously blood-looking liquid is blamed on Allan as being his red juice, which he doesn't dispute but also doesn't look too chuffed about. Boss pulls a brick out of his sleeve to take care of the inspector, but Allan holds him back and asks him what he's doing. Clearly not on board the violent solution has been presented. The inspector ends up turning to sand in front of him, which shocks him. Charlie asks why that happened. Allan says he's not really sure. I really liked Allan this episode. He feels much closer to his season 1 characterization, which I appreciate as his character has been kind of inconsistent as of late. But let's see if the trend continues with the later episodes. In episode 2, Charlie tells Allan that Pym, who was injured by Mr. Frog earlier, looks very different, and Allan thanks him for the heads up. Pym comes into the break room looking like, well, this, and Allan is best to hide his shock, asking him how he's doing. Pym asks if it's bad. Allan says that he didn't even notice. The boss walks in and asks if anyone has seen how weird Pym looks, to which Allan looks on in horror. In episode 3, Allan runs into the break room to ask Gleb what happened, as he heard a loud noise. Through a mixture of gibberish and miming, Gleb communicates that a sinkhole opened up and swallowed Pym and Charlie. Mr. Boss cries for someone to call the police, and Allan immediately obliges. The fire department comes to let them know that Pym and Charlie are definitely dead, and Mr. Boss mourns their loss. Allan confronts him, saying that he still caught him and Gleb. That gives the boss an idea, and asks if he and Gleb could be the new smiling friends. Allan says okay, and the boss rejoices. Allan does cut in after the celebration, saying that he thought he already was a smiling friend, and yeah, I love that too, Allan. We then get to one of my favorite Allan moments. He knocks on the door and turns to Gleb, telling him that this is very important, and they can't screw it up.
Hello, we're the smiling friends. Fuck!
I feel that one, Allan. I do feel that one. The woman answers the door, explaining that she just needs someone to watch her triplets while she's at work. Allan says they can do that and asks the kids if they want some lasagna now. One of the kids immediately skateboards over Allan's foot, causing him to cry out in pain. Another throws Gleb through the wall, causing him to cry out his name in concern. Allan tries to grab one to stop it from running around, only to have another one slingshot him, bringing him to the ground. They break a table over him, they start jumping on him, and he screams in distress. He never enacts any violence in this scene, which is interesting, since he seemed more okay with that in Season 2, like when he punched the secretary for simply startling him. This seems more like the Season 1 characterization, like when he didn't attack the Bibble even after being stabbed by it. And you could say it's because he's at work, or they're kids, or whatever, but I don't know. He was at work when he hit the secretary, and she was just an innocent bystander. The next cutaway involves the children riding down the stairs on top of Allan like a sled, crashing him into the wall. While they leave him briefly, instead of taking the chance to escape, he immediately runs to find Gleb, who is being given the Quentin Reviews Mr. Beast toy treatment. He tells them to turn the hose off, but they just drag him by his necktie and continue torturing him. Charlie and Pam are able to hear Allan's call of distress and come through the vents to see him hanging by his tie on the ceiling. Allan looks incredibly relieved, happy that they're alive. The Mole Man climbs out and says Allan and Gleb aren't technically smiling friends, but he'll kill him anyway. Allan says, "Fuck you," because what does he mean? Since when wasn't Allan like a smiling friend? Is this a common knowledge? The day is saved, of course, by Mole Man's member being unexpectedly attractive. Tim and Charlie are surprised given how much the Mole Man built it up to be disgusting, and Allan says he looked delicious. Charlie asks him what he just said, and Allan doubles down saying Mole Man's member does in fact look delicious. By King? At the end, he lets the boss know that Pim and Charlie were alive the whole time, but Peep doesn't react. I don't take this as much other than he's sexually active, which we already know, and he can be a bit awkward, which we also already know. The more interesting aspect of the episode, I think, is how mature and grounded Allan acted even in the face of extreme pain and chaos. Not only did he show himself to be an incredibly loyal friend, but he also acted as what I think his role was always supposed to be, the straight man in a chaotic world. I personally find his characterization, both with how he handled the triplets and the fact that he took the initiative to make the police call, a trait that's consistent in the first season, to be more consistent with Season 1. In Episode 4, Allan takes the initiative to order the group food and asks what everybody wants. Pim suggests a pizza, but the others ignore him. A witch tries to curse them after the night her a dime, and Allan tells her to get out. Stupid lady. Now look, everything that happens after this is inside an evil orb, and everyone's also noticeably out of character except maybe for Pim. I do think this is a really interesting episode if we want to analyze Pim's psyche, but it's not canon enough or interesting enough from a characterization perspective to include it in this Allan theory, in my opinion, so I'm going to skip ahead after the orb. Once the witch has been run off, a spider version of Allan comes up with pizzas and then promptly gets run over. Allan comes out and asks who that was, and Charlie says he doesn't know. This also feels like it could hug the line of non-canon to me, but it's not explicit, so there, it's included. Episode 5, Allan's on vacation with his coworkers out in the woods. The boss tells him to smell that air, to which Allan replies that all he smells is animal feces. The boss lets him know that no, those are his. Allan looks disgusted. Allan and the boss have always seemed to have a less close relationship, especially compared to the other smiling friends. And this episode is an interesting exploration of that. It's not necessarily they have an antagonistic relationship necessarily. Allan did build his rocket boots for him after all. But it does seem to be some disconnect, specifically from Mr. Boss's side. Allan asks the boss for the Wi-Fi password, and the boss tells him, yeah, it's I_hate_Allan58, all lowercase. Allan does not react to this. The boss asks later if the I hate Allan password worked, and Allan confirms that it did. Later, the boss is grilling hot dogs and asks Allan how he wants his hot dog. Allan tells him that he doesn't want a hot dog. He's got other things to worry about. He needs to draft a long email for their insurance. Boss tells him to chill out, and Allan says that's easy for him to say, but he's got a lot of responsibilities. The boss again reiterates that Allan should chill out, but Allan still does not want the hot dog. The boss throws the hot dog and storms back into the cabin, saying that's the last time he tries to make Allan a hot dog. He gets Gleb if he's in the wrong, and Gleb says, yeah, I don't agree, personally. I understand where the boss is coming from, but he's being, in my opinion, very overly sensitive. I actually think Allan could have been more antagonistic in this scene and it's still been justified, given what the boss made the Wi-Fi password. I don't know why the episode tries to frame Allan in the wrong here. Yes, he should feel like he can relax on vacation, but he's not antagonizing the boss. He's still very polite, if still awkward. Allan ends up apologizing to Mr. Boss later, which again, I don't think he's in the wrong, but being a peacemaker is in character for him, so I can't say it doesn't make sense for him. He offers to try to relax for a bit and join on the game they're playing. The boss's cookies finish cooking at that moment, and he, does that. Allan says that they look delectable and asks if he can have one. The boss teases him, saying that he has a cookie delivery for him, and Allan plays along, asking where he can sign. He eats the cookie, saying it's delicious, and the boss agrees. He gets a notification on his work computer and says, you know what? Fook this effing laptop, I'm on vacation. We're tossing out the window. The boss lets him know that was a work computer, but he is happy for him. We then get this scene, and Look, I'm on Tumblr. I've seen the fan art. This and the previous scene do have a very distinct type of tension. The boss did say that he was a player in the second Halloween episode, and Allan has dropped hints that he is liberated, we'll say. He also knocked Charlie's nose in the pilot, so I think Allan is also probably just a more physically affectionate guy, and translated through the weird lens of smelling friends, it could turn into that. So I'm not going to say this is out of character necessarily. I do find it strange though. Allan in season 3 does seem to be consistently characterized as being a bit freaky, which is kind of in line with both season 1 and 2, so that is what it is. Next morning, the boss hands Allan a cup of coffee and thanks him for licking the cookie crumbs off his stomach. Allan says that's alright, thank you for teaching him how to relax. He feels totally refreshed. Allan only appears briefly in episode 6. He's in cosplay of what I'm assuming is some kind of magical princess that I'm not familiar with. He tells Pim that he and Glep are going to AnimeCon and that he's dressed up. Pim says, yeah, he sees that, and Allan says, goodbye. At the end of the episode, we see him sitting at a table with Glep while eating fries. A very interesting looking guy walks up to his table and asks if he can have a picture with him. Allan simply responds, no. The man says, okay, I love you. Allan says, okay. He says again he loves him. Allan asks the guy can leave him alone, but the man insists, pushing himself into the table as he reaches for Allan. Allan begs him to stop, eventually running away while the man chases him. I think this is supposed to be a commentary on like guys who act weirdos towards women in cosplays, but it does actually tell us a little bit about Allan. One, this is in line with season 1, as he dressed up as the Joker for Halloween and encouraged Charlie to dress up as well, so we know this is something he enjoys. 2, the fact that he's dressed as something overtly feminine shows a lot of confidence in his masculinity, and that could be a reference to his possible bisexuality, maybe not. He does come across as very self-assured, especially in season 1, so this is in line with that, I think. In episode 7, Allan doesn't appear, so we can actually skip this one too. The last episode that Allan appears in is episode 8. He's having a performance review with Pim and Charlie. The boss hasn't really seemed to keep much track of that Allan has done that year, just that he's been doing various admin work. He still tells him good job, and Allan thanks him. The boss assumes that Glep is too busy for his performance review, and Charlie and Pim ask what Glep's job is, as they've never seen him work. Allan confirms this, saying that the lazy bastard does nothing. This is interesting to me. Allan and Glep are clearly close friends, so the fact that he threw him under the bus is strange. Maybe they just had off-screen fights, maybe Allan has a bit of jealousy over the fact that he works so hard while Glep gets away with goofing off. Maybe Glep actually does do something and Allan was trying to make like a lighthearted joke. I don't know. It does feel a bit out of character with no additional context. The boss fires Glep and Charlie says that it's going to be weird in the group chat. Allan says, yeah, we should kick him, which again, does seem very callous for him to say, again, considering that they're close friends. Allan's reactions here I think feel more aligned with season 2 rather than season 1, which is a bit odd since he did seem to be reverting back closer to his original season 1 characterization. Glep comes back to the office eventually, where everyone's in various states of distress, with Allan specifically running back and forth while screaming. Glep is rehired, and we cut to them in the separate room enjoying Christmas dinner. We actually see one of Allan's family members for the first time this episode. His father, which I'll be honest, when I first saw this scene, I thought it was going to be like an evil Allan joke, but like, no, it's his dad. Allan asks his dad for some peas, and his dad obliges, thanking him for asking nicely. He chews them and spits them back into his mouth like a baby bird, to which Allan says, nutritious. I don't know enough about critters as a species to know whether this is weird or not. There is a joke in season 1 about Pim kissing his dad in the mouth, so I'm going to say, yes, this is strange. I can't necessarily tell out of character, but it is weird. A random man appears at the end of the episode saying that this was an example of how we can all get along despite our differences. Except for a certain group of people. You know who I'm talking about. Comment below what group of people came to your mind. Allan asks who this guy is, but he never answers. Okay, we did it. Congratulations on making this far. That was a lot we had to go through. But we're here now, so we can actually take everything we've just seen and try to come to a conclusion. But before we get into that, I just want to throw it out there that I do make videos just like this, where I analyze media in interesting, unique ways, sometimes in the form of theory like the video you're watching now, but always in a way that's fun. So, if you made it this far and you like what you see, you are totally welcome to click that subscribe button and bell. I have a lot more cool projects coming up ahead, and I would love if you want to be there for those. Anyway, let's actually get into the theory. So, was there a noticeable shift in Allan's character between season 1 and 2? Yes. Was there a noticeable shift between Allan in season 2 and season 3? Kind of, yeah. It was more like he went back to mostly resembling his season 1 characterization, but there were still some quirks like thrown in there. I think a lot more obvious evidence points in isolation can definitely be explained away, but when we take Allan's characterization as a whole, from season to season, it's not so easy to explain, because he does change. Now, does he change because he's literally a different person? Well, I think you could actually argue for that. Apart from the name change and the art change from season 1 to 2, there is also a noticeable personality change as well. I don't know if there's enough to say that there's like physically two different identical critters named Allan, but I think you could make an argument for more of like a Jekyll and Hyde thing, where there are two different personalities existing within the same body that aren't fully aware of what the other one is doing. This theory is really fun, but I'll be honest, I don't think there's enough evidence to concretely prove it right. If there was, I imagine we've already known about it. I think it does offer an interesting explanation to the shift between season 1 and season 2, and to a lesser extent the shift between season 2 and season 3. I think the big thing with this one for me is the why, because it does feel like a working backwards theory, doesn't it? Like, think about it. You sit down to watch the show. You see a character that has two distinctive speaking patterns, who sometimes acts oddly, but other times acts relatively normally. You binge watch the show, noticing a shift between the way the character is drawn and the way they behave between seasons. So you rub your chin in thought and think it's almost like I'm watching two similar but slightly different characters. It's the easiest explanation because it's not one that really needs to clearly tie together. Allan has a different name, different Allan. Allan has a different tie, a different Allan. Allan acts out of character, different Allan. Any inconsistency could be hand-waved away with like, oh, that's a different Allan. But here's the thing. I've watched this show multiple times, and honestly, I'm not convinced. I think there's an explanation which makes the inconsistencies make sense while having Allan exist as one conscious and one entity at the same time. See, I don't think what we're seeing is two slightly different Allans swapping back and forth in the same red body. No. What I think we're seeing here is one Allan in one body who's going through a 3-season emotional arc in the background of the show that we never took the time to stop and notice. When I was watching season 2, I was wondering if we were watching someone go through some kind of autistic burnout. If his job was getting too overwhelming and he was having a hard time regulating himself, keeping the mask on, as it were. Neurodivergence doesn't make you a jerk, and it doesn't make you violent, but it does make it hard to emotionally regulate, and it makes it harder to function both day to day and socially. As someone who has, and honestly still kind of is experiencing this, and who has a neurodivergent partner who has also gone through this multiple times, I did feel like I saw a little bit of that journey in Allan's character between seasons. In season 1, he starts off consistent, responsible, taking initiative, working hard, trying to navigate the social dynamics of his work. He even irons his tie every day before he goes into work. This feels like, to me, the novelty phase of a new job. A lot of neurodivergent people, when they get a new job, sometimes excel at it very quickly. It's novel, it's new, it's interesting, and they might generally enjoy the work. But there comes a point where the pace can't be kept up with anymore, even if that's the expectation that they set. And if you don't have a good boss, one that understands what's going on and has your back, well, in season 2, Allan is on edge. He does seem to be a lot snappier with people, both with his coworkers and other people in his life. He's not as friendly. He doesn't try to keep the peace between himself and other people. He's quicker to violence. He's quicker to annoyance. He doesn't iron his tie anymore. He doesn't drop his nasally affect. There's something kind of off about Allan in season 2. He, at least to me, almost seems burnt out. He's having trouble keeping up socially with his coworkers. His job doesn't feel so fulfilling. Even if he is doing it well, he's not getting acknowledged for his work efforts very often. He's still doing all the clerical work in the background, and on top of that, he's also going the extra mile to go on various adventures to help his workplace. Maybe he's not so much a different guy as he's a guy that can't keep up the facade anymore. The only problem I have with this reading is season 3. Overall, I was kind of reverted back into his original self, and in my personal experience, that doesn't really happen unless 1, you know you're about to quit and get a new job, or 2, you step down in some kind of way. You take less hours, you take less work, less responsibilities, you somehow lighten the load so that you actually have the energy to mask. And the fact that we have an entire episode about Allan being a workaholic, I think kind of helps and hurts this reading. Helps as in it would validate the idea that he's working hard and burning out to the point where the boss notices and tries to help him, but he's kind of normal for the first 4 episodes. If we could definitively put the camping episode before the other episodes on this timeline, I think this theory makes so much sense. Allan has a moment with the boss. He's able to find a way to not care as much and take some stuff off his plate. And while his nerves aren't like totally healed, he is doing better than before and starting to find a balance that works for him. The fact that I can't definitively put things in this order is what's keeping me from saying, yeah, this is a slam dunk. But this reading, at least to me, does make a lot of sense, especially between season 1 and 2 as far as explaining this character shift. I can't say they have a perfect, clean solution for why this character shift happens between seasons, as at the end of the day, it could also just be inconsistent writing that I'm retroactively trying to make sense of. And if that is the case, then I just think I did a decent job for what I've been given. Allan is a neurodivergent, burnt-out employee in a strange and kooky world. He's trying his best to be a good friend and employee while still being true to himself and holding down his own boundaries. But the world isn't perfect and neither is his job. He eventually burns out from trying to keep up with the social misunderstandings, increasing work demands, to the point where he can't properly mask anymore. He ends up in a situation where he and the boss can communicate this, and as a result, is able to take some steps towards finding a balance that works for him. Which is why he fades into being more of a background character in season 3, despite being so much more present in season 2. That being said, what do you guys think? Do you think this is a good reading of the character, or do you think the doppelganger theory makes more sense? Honestly, I'm not sure how many of you guys watching this are actually employed or have been employed, so it might not be something that you have like personal experience with, but if you do have experience with being a burnt out neurodivergent person in the workforce, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are, and if you also find yourself relating to Allan in this way. I do have a companion video up on my Ko-Fi right now that's even more Allan if you haven't already had enough, and it's a very fun video, so feel free to check that out if you're interested, link in the description. You can also support my channel by watching any of my videos on my channel, not just the ones behind a paywall. And if you watch one of my videos right after this one, that's actually one of the best ways to boost me in the algorithm. YouTube should be generating a video to recommend to you that it thinks I'd be interested in about nowish. So I don't know, maybe you can check that out, leave a comment whether you think you did a good job or not. Thank you so much for watching. You guys are awesome. And remember,